Hello, and thanks for joining us for another episode of Mid-American Gardener. I'm your host, Tanisha Spain, and joining me in the studio today are two of our longtime friends of the show. We've got Rusty and Shane in the house, so we'll have them introduce themselves, tell you a little bit about their specialty, and then we've got a lot of your questions to tackle. So, Rusty, we'll start with you.
Sure. My name is Rusty Malding. I am the site superintendent at Lake of the Woods. Been there for a couple of years now. In my previous life, for about 25 years, I worked in the landscape contractor world, horticulturist, and just sort of a jack of all trades when it comes to plants, I guess.
Excellent. Okay.
Hi, I'm Shane Culture. I'm one of the family of owners of Country Arbors Nursery, and I am now retired. And so my former life was answering questions all day and helping people with plants and growing plants. And my current life is actually planting them and getting to work in my own yard for the first time in 30 years.
And
So
actually
now I have some
enjoying them.
practical experience and a lot of experience growing. So
Excellent. So we got a lot of combined knowledge up here. Not saying you're old, gentlemen. Combined knowledge.
my head says I'm getting there.
We're definitely getting there, yes.
And as soon as I
Yes.
told everyone it was you two that were coming, the questions just started flooding in.
Yeah, I saw my name in there. It
Yes.
said Shane said. And I said, oh,
It's so
I
funny
have to
how
honor my word.
they know your specialties. You
Yeah.
know, like when they know Phil is coming, it's all insect questions. When they know Marty's
Yeah.
coming, it's landscape. Like everyone knows you guys are forestry and nursery folks, and so
Funny how that happens over 20 years.
yeah,
Good stuff.
20
Yeah.
years you've taught,
Yeah.
you've learned them.
Yeah.
Okay, so Rusty, we're gonna start with you. You sent in some beautiful pictures that made us all just, So let's look into those.
Sure. So, early spring is a great time to get out to trails. And one of the things you're going to see on a lot of trails, particularly woodland trails, are some spring ephemerals. And so we've got some really cool shots here of two species in particular that are going to be on, and many times sort of an open woodland or even sort of open, maybe savanna type situation. Claytonia virginica is, most people will know as spring beauties. Those are one of the first little white flowers that pops up. Many people have them in their yards, which is fantastic, in their lawns, as well as into the bed spaces. This is one of those plants that will absolutely naturalize, but does so in a way that is not invasive or intrudes on other plantings that you may have. It only gets to be about 6 inches tall, maybe 9 inches. Little white flower, a couple of strappy green leaves, and just goes to town, kind of does its own thing, and over the course of the next 6 weeks, maybe a month, it sort of disappears and fades into the earth. The next one there, everyone's going to know it as woodland phlox. Woodland phlox is one of those also great kind of naturalizing phloxes. Most people think of summer whenever they, you have phlox. This is a very early bloomer, and does a great job also of naturalizing, but not in an invasive way. This plant is just a little bit taller. It's going to get to be probably 9 to 12 inches, so still pretty short in stature. Both of these plants are going to do well in part shade. The spring beauty is going to trend a little bit more towards full sun or part shade, whereas the woodland phlox is a bit more part shade to full shade. Both of them are just, I don't know, they're just sort of a harbinger of spring for me.
Yes.
And just a great thing to kind of watch in mass as they go out and blanket the woodland floor.
So pretty, very pretty. And I always love, we were talking about before the show, just those signs that you notice in your yard or in your area where it's like, all right, we made it over the hump.
Absolutely.
I mean, there might be a few more snow flurries, but once you see stuff like this, it's like, we did it.
And you know what? This is the perfect time. If you're sitting at home and you're looking for something to do on a Saturday or even a weeknight, go out and hit a trail someplace, because there are no mosquitoes yet. Poison ivy is still very much, it's just starting to come out, so not really an issue. Just no insects. I mean, it's just, it's a lovely time to be out and just go for a walk and get the heart moving around a little bit.
And find some morels, maybe.
Yeah.
I've heard it's been a great morel season.
I've seen, videos, TikToks of people finding a lot, but I don't know locally. I haven't heard anybody.
No?
Nobody tells you anyway.
No.
Like, they're not going to tell you
I
that
got
they
one
found
guy I've been working on trying to find his spot for about 15
You gotta
years.
the only time they put a bag over your head and take you to the location.
Yeah.
No kidding.
This doesn't sound as fun as I thought it would.
No kidding. No kidding. All
And I
right.
was going to say on the woodland phlox, they've cultivated some new varieties. So you're getting that hardiness and that natural plant, but getting some new colors on there.
Yep.
So it's really nice to, everybody knows the subulata, so you see it hanging over. But the woodland phlox can take that shade, and yet there's a lot of choices out there now to add to your garden. And because we like natural, but we don't want it to take over everything. And sometimes we
Exactly.
like to choose colors even. So to get kind of a alternative natural, I call
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Semi-natural
Yeah.
is a nice choice out there.
And I know even within our planting, or not plantings, our naturalized areas, we see definitely various hues of blue, into some white. There are some pinks that are out there. So
Those
it's,
are all, yeah.
my
all-
guess is
pretty.
that those are selected varieties.
That's what
which
that's
is awesome.
usually, and with cloning, cloning is literally just taking one, as you know, that has the color they want. Then when they're walking around, and they just keep dividing that one
Yep,
and taking cutting. So yeah, that's what selection's all about.
absolutely.
Fascinating. Okay. All right, Shane, what you bringing?
Well, speaking of selections, you know, when I go out to the nursery, and I have for years, I've always asked the people that grow or the people that work there, what's their favorite plant? I used to say it because I needed to know that, because if they're selling, they generally sell a lot of those. You know, when you ask somebody their favorite tree, that's the most popular tree at the nursery. It's maybe not the
Interesting.
best, but if somebody has one in their yard, then they see it, they love it, and so somebody asks, that's what comes to mind. But now I ask them because I haven't been there all year, and I'm curious what's new and what they're enjoying. And sometimes it's going to be because what grows the best, but other times it's just because it's new and exciting. And this is Julie Carlson at the nursery. She's our annual grower, and she's doing perennial growing as well. And she was really excited about the red delphinium, and it's called Red Lark. And delphiniums, you see all the colors. You see the purples and you see the pinks, but you don't see red very often. And this is a newer variety, and it's at all the popular growers like Walter's Gardens who provide the supplies to nurseries such as ourselves, but it was really hard to get. And she gets really excited, and we all do when we get a plant that not a lot of people have, because we know as gardeners,
sure.
Absolutely.
sometimes it's about you coming to my garden and saying, I don't have that. It
Where
doesn't
did
really
you
even
get
matter
it?
what it is.
Exactly, yes.
It's
Right.
just that you don't have it. And so we get excited at the nursery, the same thing. So this is Red Lark. It's about 24 to 30 inches tall, and it is a true perennial. Now, the delphiniums don't live a long time around here. 2 or 3 years is what we say. But if you have it in a good location and you keep it a good rootstock, you can get it to last 4 or 5 years as well. So it's something that's different. It's that beautiful flower. It's a beautiful bright red, and it is a true perennial. So it's something to look for. And it will be a little harder to find this year, but it is out there and in the market. So.
Okay. And then what conditions does it like?
Yeah, so it's going to take probably full sun with
Full
a little
sun.
bit of break from the sun. All plants like a little break from the sun, not just get blasted. But yeah, it's going to be more of a sun plant, and it's going to be just what you think. Delphiniums, you know, when you think of Canada, like Vancouver and that area, they're just stunning. In Illinois, out in the prairie, they get a little tall, you know, so you got to stake them. I stake them if I'm in a newer neighborhood so they don't blow over, just a
Gotcha.
simple stick. But when they get going and in full bloom, there's nothing like them.
Ooh, so if you've got a bed and you've got your short ones in the front, where would these fall?
I would
Closer
at
to your back?
24 to 30, probably closer to the back,
back?
or between two larger shrubs.
Okay.
But it's not going to be in the front. It's probably going to be in the middle. And I'll use the other shrubs to protect it from the wind as well. And again, knowing that it's not a super long season of blooming, I'll mix it in. But that's what perennials are all about, right? Is having things that are longer lasting, things that are shorter, and just having something in bloom all the time. But red is a difficult color to get in perennials. We don't get a lot of true reds. There's reds out there, but there tend to be maruns. I know a lot of people at the garden center all say red, and they go, it's
That's
not red.
not.
I'm, like, I'm a guy, I don't even know what fuchsia really looks like. I have an idea. I know it's pinkish, but I've been told it's a solid red.
Awesome. Okay, well, look for
Yeah.
that in the nurseries this season, and we'll check out your other stuff in just
You
a
got
sec.
more later.
Okay. All right. So we've had a lot of folks write in about the cicadas.
Yeah.
People are getting very nervous because we've talked about, you know, there could be damage to their trees. And so the questions are just rolling in about cicadas. So we've got a couple here. Dennis wants to know if they're going to, if he needs to put netting or anything on his fruit trees to protect them from the cicadas. So
Yeah. The cicadas are coming. The cicadas are coming. We're being invaded here shortly. You know, Central Illinois may be getting 2 broods of a periodical cicada. So that's really what we're talking about here today, is the periodical cicada. Unlike the dog day cicada that comes in more middle of summer, this one will be emerging sometime in May, more than likely, at least in Central Illinois. And this is one, I believe there's a 13-year and is it a 17?
Yeah.
A 17-year.
got
They're potentially coming at the same time, which is really, really unusual. But with that kind of emergence, you run the risk of having some significant damage. So they will emerge with larger numbers than the regular annual dog day cicada. And so that then poses a challenge to some trees. The biggest challenge is they like to, the females like to lay their eggs. They will cut them into the bottom sides of small caliper branches. And we're talking like 3/8 of an inch on up to about 3/4 to an inch or thereabouts. And they will just cut a line right in the bottom and they'll lay their eggs in there. And then that causes a scar along that entire branch tissue. On mature trees, on larger diameter or caliper trees, they're going to self-heal. You know, you're going to see some twig loss. You know, you may see next year and really over the course of the whole next year, branches, twigs of this nature just sort of dropping out of your trees, which is fine. They will recover and be fine. The real concern is with your small, newly planted trees that are not maybe well established or are perhaps just not quite robust enough to recover as well. And so it's fantastic. You know, the viewers all know, like, this is a deal. What's going on? Let's find out. And so really the protection opportunity is either just before they come out or even after, just right after they come out. You can put netting over small trees. Something with a hole that is 1/4 inch in across or smaller. So this is fairly fine netting. I've heard tooling can also be used. There was another question about somebody about their crab apples wanting to know, or no, their
It was a
fruit
red
trees.
point maple.
There was a fruit tree question, I think, about whether it was going to pollinate or not.
Yes, yes, that's true. Yes.
Yep, and I'm sorry, I'm skipping ahead.
No,
on
it's
you.
okay. It's okay.
By the time you put the netting on, the pollination for all of those fruiting trees should be done.
Okay.
Particularly like your apples, pears, and peaches, things like that. So that is not an issue. Wait until, I would say, maybe the second week of May here in central Illinois. It's going to be weather dependent. We were talking the ground has to be at 64 degrees. Is that the magic temperature? So we're not quite there yet. We're in a cool stretch right now. We're going to warm up at the weekend and then cool back down again. And I think the first week of May, it looks like we may have some heat coming through. So it'll be after the first week of May. We get plenty of time. Go out and you can net your trees.
Okay.
It's important to close up and cinch the bottom. So use some loose,
So they
like
don't get in
floral
there.
tape or something along those lines, something that's loose.
Okay.
So it's like you're literally draping it and closing it at the bottom.
Okay.
So don't try to do your big trees, just small
Not
trees.
the big ones. To kind of piggyback on that, Susan Jean says she's got a 4-year-old red point maple in her front yard. The branches are still thin. She's wondering what she should do about that one. So would you bag or net that one?
Same thing.
Same thing.
Same
Okay.
thing. Yeah, most of your trees that, if they were container trees or even like small bald and burlap trees, like 2-inch trees and 3-inch trees, if you planted them within the last 3, maybe 5 years, it's probably not a bad idea to go ahead and net them.
But you're going to want to get the netting now
Yeah.
because everybody's going to think of it the
Everybody's
last
going
minute,
to be getting
and you
it.
won't be finding any, especially locally.
And to be clear, this is not going to be a problem in your newer subdivisions. So they are only going to emerge where mature trees were 13, 17 years ago. So if you're in an area that's had a lot of disturbance, 1,000 feet, I think, is
That's
what
what Jim
Jim
said. Yep,
Appleby
good
said.
rule of thumb.
Yeah. So that's
And not planted 13 years ago, but mature
Yes,
13 years
had to be
ago.
mature
So we're
13
talking
years.
25-year-old trees,
Yes.
roughly.
Yep.
Then you'll be hearing.
So Stone Creek, we're clear. We're not even, we're
So
barely
the viewers
25
in
years.
Stone Creek,
Right.
you're okay.
You're all
Yeah,
good.
we're pretty good.
You're all good.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Get ready. All right, Shane, we're back to you with some pretties.
Yeah, so one of my favorite plants in the world is coleus. And I love coleus because it doesn't have flowers. It does officially have flowers, I shouldn't say that. But we're not growing it because of the flowers. We're growing it because of the foliage. And there are literally thousands and thousands of different colors of foliage. And at this point, after my entire life of 30 years of following them, they're starting to look the same in a lot of cases. So I think at 1,500 varieties, we haven't gotten too much. But then new ones have come out that have different shaped leaves that are called of the sea that look like shrimp. And it just, again, it never ceases to amaze me, the new colors. And when I went in this time, at the nursery, I think we probably have 50 varieties. These 3 grabbed me right out of the bat. Again, everybody's different. If I were to send Rusty in, he would probably grab different ones. But these will grow roughly 18 inches, maybe 24 inches high and wide. And if you don't like it, you merely pinch off the top. and then you're fine. And if you wanted to pinch off that top and put it in soil, you could grow it. It will root up within a week, and you'll have another plant. So they're easy to propagate, easy to grow. They fill containers with lovely foliage. So when things aren't in bloom, these always look good. Back in the 70s and 80s, they were only a shade plant, but they've developed them now to take sun and shade. So you can grow these really anywhere in the entire property you put a pot.
Will the sun change their appearance?
They do not. Now, some of them will get larger quicker. So like all plants, they tend to reach size much quicker in the sun. So if you had a pot with this in it in the shade and the one in the sun, this one will probably be twice as big.
Gotcha.
But the color won't generally
won't change?
There are some Kong series that tend to change leaves a little bit with the sun in the shade. But in general, most of the sun varieties are going to be consistent. And there's also trailing forms, so they have some that are more shade oriented, but they'll actually trail over a pot just like a wave petunia.
Now that's what I'm in the market for.
But those, you have to remember, they like it a little on the dry side too. So that's the one thing is we have people that say they're not trailing and they're saying small. Well, people water them. These you really can't hurt. These you can water. You can miss a watering and they're fine. You can overwater them. They're pretty good. They're just... It's one of those, it's like the hosta of the annual world.
Anytime like a tip breaks off, I'm like, don't throw that away.
I know. I know at the Idea Garden, I've seen people taking cuttings off of it, and master gardeners will look over and say, please don't do that. And the lady's like, oh, I got a whole pocket full of everything.
I'm really sorry.
And even when I go on the garden walks, or I'll go to Ball Seed and they'll have all their new ones, my tendency is like, oh, could get a new
There's
one.
a term for that now. It's called prop lifting. Not shoplifting.
Propagation.
No kidding.
Propagation lifting.
Wow.
Prop lifting.
Which I own propagation.com too.
Oh my gosh.
geez.
Of course you do.
All the words and things that I do. So now I need prop lifting. But it's absolutely true. When you see someone walking a plastic bag on a garden walk, you're like, stay out of my yard. But coleus is the easiest one to do. And in some cases, you're helping them because when you take it, it gets fuller and branches off really nice. They trim very well.
You're doing a service by prop lifting.
Yeah, you're helping them when you walk through. So yeah, it's a great plant. Definitely look around for different varieties.
When my wife and I would go to do annual containers together, we had like his and hers coleus because they all had all of our planters had coleus in them, but I tended towards the bigger, bolder leaf like the Kong series, and she liked the daintier ones, so like the trailers. So we had to mix and match.
Everyone's got their coleus that
and
they
their colors.
prefer.
Like some people like these bright outsides, other people like the spotty.
I like the pinky ones too. Those are pretty.
They're really good. They're all over there's not blues yet, but we don't have blue leaves very well yet. So, but the flowers are a purple color, and they're nice. But I usually take them off because it hinders the growth of the other plant. Once they go to, like all plants, the flower takes a lot of energy. Sure. So I take the flowers off of it. But yeah, this is the one that caught my eye. I don't know why, but this is the first one I grabbed.
Gorgeous.
This one's actually at my house. So
Very pretty.
I promised her I wouldn't take these to my house either. I'd actually bring them back.
Now, you usually bring tools when you come, so this is a great question for you. This is from Peter. He says, what is the best solution to clean garden tools and pruners? So what do you use?
Sure.
Because I know it's by the book.
No, I usually, when you say this, I'm thinking about like spades and shovels and things of that nature, and I usually use a spade to clean off everything. Oh. Because it's kind of has a straight edge, and you can usually just get in and whittle it off. If you're particularly fastidious, you may want to use like a 1-inch putty knife or something along those lines. That works really well to get in grooves and get the soil off. The biggest thing after we've gone out and as a landscape contractor, you tend to work in conditions that homeowners don't necessarily want to, and it's muddy and things of that nature. So it's about getting that soil off and leaving it on the job site, and so you're not tracking things around from property to property. So we try to clean everything, before we bring it back to the shop. But getting all that dirt off and get it dry, and then just kind of set it there.
Yeah.
Okay.
I spray Pam on my shovel when it gets mucky.
Interesting.
I was going to say,
Tips of the trade.
Yeah, if it's going to sit for a long time, a light oil of some sort.
In the old days, everybody used to drop their digging shovels. Before we had tree spades, we hand dug all the trees in the field, and they took it seriously because they got paid by the piece. So when they left at the end of the day, they would actually throw their shovels in a bucket of oil so that it never rust up. So it's always, and they would pound it out so that the surface of the shovel was exactly, it was always sharp.
Wow.
Their tools were literally how they made a living. Nowadays, we really don't want oil on our shovels, but to keep it, like I will put blaster on mine, you know, that way you take
Oh, the PV blaster.
the PV blaster because it keeps it non-rusty, keeps it sharp. I don't want to get it in my soil, but I'm not digging up tomatoes or anything like those lines. But Pam, it works really well because we dig a lot of mucky soils and we have a lot of clay in Illinois. But Pam seems to be a little bit more natural.
Yeah.
So I spray it on there and it doesn't stick nearly as well.
Interesting. Okay.
Just think of it just like coating like a cast iron pan.
Instead of your eggs coming off, your soil's coming off.
Yeah,
Nice.
exactly.
Okay.
And you know, the other thing I guess I would add is a nice sharp tool is always best.
Yeah.
So a nice metal file to sharpen up the spade edge, even a round point edge. It goes a long way towards making your job a little easier when you're
Yeah, you would
digging.
never go in the kitchen with a dull knife.
Yeah.
Why would you go into the
Why
garden
would
with
you?
a dull shovel?
Why would you?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Let's see. Okay, Susan Francis writes in. I saw a fascinating program that originated from, I can't pronounce that, Keukenhof
I just saw the
in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They talked about saving tulips by retaining and not cutting the leaves after blooming and lifting the bulbs end of June, early July, cold storing in a fridge, and then replanting only the larger ones in November. Will this strategy work here in Illinois?
The producers do that the opposite. So the bulbs we buy here in the States, they actually do that. They harvest them just like that, put them in cold storage, and then the smaller ones go back and they sell the other ones to make money. So they're always dividing out the bulbs. And they do want duplications, but we usually don't get the smaller ones. They go ahead and grow those on and get more bulbs.
So
And then-
leaves and everything?
Oh yeah, because as we talk about this all the time, all your bulbs, they get their energy and put their size on using the foliage up top. So you'll hear a lot of people braiding them and putting rubber bands. That's because you want the foliage so that bulb will continue to grow.
Oh.
But you don't want that messy top.
You want to photosynthesize, so you're creating energy, putting food back into the bulb.
Yeah. So the top is
Okay.
the most important part of, and so that's why they say let things die back. That's what
Yes.
they mean. Same with peonies. You know, they'll call us and ask, should I cut my peonies down? No, you want that top to build those root system. And bulbs are exactly the same way. But it's funny because I'll go in a yard and I could tell there's a really good hair braider because they'll be perfect like little ponytails all in the garden. They spend a long time.
Interesting. I've
But-
heard that with garlic, which now makes sense because
Yeah.
got the bulb. But so pulling the tulips with the leaves on them and then storing them
And then storing
that
them,
same way.
and then choosing the best. If you're going to do it for home, you would choose the best ones to replant. I would probably put them all in. If it's
Yeah.
my own house, I
Interesting.
don't know why I would throw any of them away. But you know, the Park District in Champaign, I don't know if they make this ever public, but they lift their bulbs at the end of the season. They plant them all. They blow in the spring, and then there's just tubs of them, and they slowly make it around town at various places. I'm not sure what the rules are or where they're supposed to go, but they do make them around town. And it is interesting to see that even though you planted this bulb, they do have different sizes and shapes. And if you were to leave them a couple years, then you would get bulbettes or whatever the official word is of different sizes. But yeah, absolutely, yeah, it's a great way to do it. That's how they do it as growers. So whatever growers do, you obviously could do in your own yard.
I learned something new today.
I will say,
do.
anybody who has a chance to go to Keukenhof in May, it is absolutely breathtaking.
Yeah.
Just fields and fields and fields of tulips.
Wow. And you can just walk the grounds and
Yeah, be careful though, the neighbors are not too far away. I went there as a college student and ended up in somebody's backyard.
wandered a little too far.
Not
there,
paying
did
attention to
you?
where I was going. Many people would tell you that's not the first time, won't be the last.
Yeah.
We've got about 2 minutes left, and I would just like to hear what you guys hope to grow this year at home in your own gardens. If you even have time, because I know like doing it for a living probably makes it hard to do at home, but you
Yeah.
got some things on the calendar? Or have you put some things in already?
Well, actually, I'm moving.
Oh.
So I'm not sure exactly where we're moving to yet, but we know where we're going to relocate, and so this is going to be a pause year for me in the garden.
Okay, you're gonna take
I'm
the
not,
year off.
I'm not putting in a vegetable garden this spring for the first time since we moved to Watsika. So yeah, I'm kind of looking forward to the
That'll
next
be
chapter and
interesting.
see where we go.
And I'm the
Yeah.
opposite. This will
Yeah.
be the first year I'm here, or not working, and I'm actually here. So I'm here all the way till August. And I
you're
have
just
a
gonna
vegetable
grow
garden.
everything.
My yard, my wife told me, It's the best my yard has ever looked.
Oh,
And
yeah,
I was so excited because that's what I was shooting for.
Yeah.
Is to have nice grass and cut the corner. Like I've never edged. Who has time for edging when
No.
you got to get to work? But yeah, so I've put all and I do bags. I really like the tomato bags because I can move them wherever I want.
Mm-hmm.
And I grew my wife a dahlia section. So I have
Okay.
a whole section. So when she looks out the window or I look out the window, we walk out the back porch, there's a big bed of flowers. So
Beautiful.
I'm excited this year.
You're on the
actually.
good list
Yeah,
now.
no, have been studying for 30 years to do this. So it's time to,
Now
to
you can
make it
put
look
all
nice.
your skills to work.
And a happy wife is a happy life.
That's true. I'm just looking forward to clearing the leaf litter. I mentioned that I was going to do it early, and I got into trouble last time on the show. Don't you dare mess with the leaf litter, and you leave it until. Okay, so it's still there.
We have been leaving ours. I've switched to that methodology here about a year or two ago, and it is amazing actually what it does for
Yeah,
the
except
insect
out in the
populations.
country, your neighbors get your leaf litter. Like if I put it in a, it gets smaller. I thought it was decomposting. It's
moving
just
around?
de-blowing.
Yeah, just to the next house
to
down
the other
down
yard.
the lane. So.
Yeah.
You don't have enough mature trees to create enough leaf litter.
I have
That's
more
the
than
problem.
anybody in that
There
area.
you go.
But it's still not enough. Yeah, it's a lot in the country. It gets going pretty good.
Yeah. Well, guys, thank you so much. We're out of time. It goes so fast when we're having a good time. So thanks for joining us, and thank you so much for watching. And if you have any questions or you have questions for these guys or any of our other panelists, you can send us an email to yourgarden@gmail.com, and we'll get those answered for you. And you can also search for us on social media. Just look for Mid-American Gardener. We'll see you next time. Good night.